Hey there and welcome into this new video lesson where I'm gonna be sharing with you the 7 best opening traps in the Scandinavian Defense. I'm Grandmaster Igor Smirnov from the Remote Chess Academy, and let's go ahead and get started. The Scandinavian Defense happens after the first move e4 and then black goes pawn to d5, which is a very common move, especially on the level below 2000 rating, I would say. A lot of players like to play Scandinavian because it's a bit tricky, and I'm gonna share with you some traps that you can use either for white or for black, and therefore, regardless of the color that you're playing, you can use these traps. Alright, so let's go into the first trap. Here white goes knight to c3 to attack the queen and gain a tempo for development. In this position, usually black retreats with his queen to a5, sometimes to d6, and occasionally also to d8, which is the oldest variation, the oldest way of playing Scandinavian, and we'll discuss different lines. Let's start from queen d8, the oldest and most classical, so to say, way of playing Scandinavian. Here white goes pawn to d4, and at this point black can start playing in a little bit aggressive style. He can start going knight to c6, putting pressure on your d4 pawn, and then if you play knight to f3, black can continue with his aggressive intentions by playing bishop to g4, which puts the pin on your knight as well as strengthens the threat to your pawn on d4. And if you're not familiar with the line, you may feel a little bit uncomfortable because of that pressure that black puts onto your position, and maybe you'll start playing a defensive move, something like bishop to e3, just trying to keep the position. However, there is actually a way more aggressive way to react to black's aggressive intentions. You can go pawn to d5. Black replies knight to e5, taking advantage of the same pin on your knight and the fact that your knight cannot go away, and therefore it once again looks like black is doing something aggressive, but here you can deploy a really strong counter blow, which is knight takes e5. All of a sudden you give up your queen, and then after black captures the queen, because what else can he do, then you go bishop b5 check. Now, the only meaningful way for black to cover his king is to play pawn to c6, and then you recapture the pawn. And it's a really interesting situation where it is black's turn, he has an extra queen, and yet he or she is defenseless against your upcoming threats. White's main threat is that discover check, which you can execute with your bishop. And you can do that either by pushing your pawn to c7, from there it will attack the queen, or you can capture the pawn on b7, and from there the pawn will attack the rook. And either way, it's extremely powerful, and suddenly there is really no way for black to stop you from playing one of these two moves, where you will at the very least take back the material, but most probably you'll actually gain a significant material advantage. In the game that we're analyzing, black actually played also a pretty creative move, bishop to e2. Who would ever thought that black can play bishop to e2? But it actually does make a little bit of sense, because he's trying to distract your bishop from b5, he's trying to move it away. And in case you take with a bishop, that would obviously help black significantly, because then your threat is not real anymore. But the fun fact is that if white captures with the knight here, then somehow black can escape. He can play queen to a5 check, attacking your bishop, and after white goes knight to c3, black can castle, and somehow black managed to get away from your threats. Therefore, the black's move bishop to e2, which we just saw a move ago, was actually not as meaningless as it seems at first. It's actually a pretty tricky and creative way of playing. But in the game that we're analyzing, white just captured with a king, and that was all over for black. In the game there followed pawn to a6, black is still trying to pressure your bishop, white goes pawn to c7, attacking the queen, and then after this exchange, we can see that currently white has an extra minor piece and a totally winning position. Really clever way of playing by white, and also a really cool combination. And yeah, so you can take notice of this opening trap and use it, preferably as white. Here we go with a trap number 2. White goes e4, pawn to d5, Scandinavian Defense, and this time we're gonna take a look at the most popular response by black, queen goes to a5. Then white plays knight to f3. f3, and here, let's say black goes bishop to g4. It is one of the ways for black to play, and again, a lot of the amateur players, they really love to place their bishop on g4 and create this pin and somehow start making the situation being uncomfortable for you. Therefore, you can play pawn to h3, trying to drive this bishop away, and then after an eventual recapture, black can go knight to c6. What is the black's plan? Well, as you can see, that knight from c6 can possibly go to d4, and it can double attack your queen and the pawn on c2. Black is also ready potentially to castle queenside, which may possibly give black a really active position if black just has these few moves to play, such as castling and knight d4, and it can already put you in some trouble. Therefore, you need to act quickly, and there is a great way for you to do that. You can play bishop to b5, attacking the knight, which is double attacked currently by your bishop and the queen, therefore black needs to protect it somehow. Now black is in trouble, and the only way actually to protect the knight is to play queen to b6. But then it's not the end, because here there is a beautiful tactical continuation that you can play. You can actually think about this for a second and check it for yourself whether you can find the following tactical shot of white, which wins the game on the spot. It is knight to d5. You're sacrificing the bishop, keeping in mind that in case black captures the bishop, you will then go knight takes c7, which is a fork to the black's king and queen, and boom, he's done. It's also worth mentioning that there is no way for black to escape here. If black tries playing queen to a5 to keep protection of the c7 pawn, you can still play pawn to b4 and force black into capturing your bishop, because black can't capture the pawn with the knight because the knight is pinned. Therefore, there is no other way for black. He has to move the queen away, and then he'll play that deadly move knight to c7, winning the game. Before we move on to other cool traps, and there are some really mind-blowing ones which I'm gonna share with you in a moment, let me take a moment to thank you for your support. Recently, we reached 100,000 subscriber mark on YouTube with more than 12 million views. And it's a great privilege and honor for me and for our entire team of the Remote Chess Academy to be able to serve you guys. It's always my great pleasure to see the feedback when you share in your comments, in your emails, where I see how you implemented some of the lessons or courses that you studied, and then you managed to achieve your chess goals, get new rating records, get new cool victories, etc., etc. That is great. Once again, thank you very much for your support. It means a lot for us. And in order to celebrate this 100,000 subscriber mark, we will run a little special offers which you can take advantage of. Being our loyal subscriber, you will be aware of these offers. So first of all, you can get our premium courses at a discounted price, which can help you to achieve new great results in chess. Also, I thought about the best way for me to be able to help you. And I thought about the most common questions that you guys ask me about. And usually it's about how to play the middle game stage. Because in an opening, it is more or less simple. You can actually just follow tutorials such as this video lesson that you are watching, or other videos, about how to play theoretical lines, and you can just follow them. But then, as you approach the middle game stage, there is no theory anymore. You gotta find the right moves yourself. And that is the most complicated stage of the chess game. As well, this is the most important stage of the chess game, because usually the result of a game is decided exactly in the middle game. And therefore, in order to help you master this middle game stage, we have created the Middle Game Expert package, where we took our most powerful middle game courses together into a single package, where you can learn and master, once again, this most important stage of a chess game, which can help you to get this new breakthrough in chess. So if you're interested, you can click the link down below the video and get it right now. Because of the celebration, you can get it at a great discounted price. So once again, thank you very much. It's great to celebrate this milestone for our YouTube channel. I certainly committed to bring much more valuable lessons for you. And without further ado, let's move on to the trap number 3. The first moves are, of course, the same: pawn to e4, pawn to d5, Scandinavian Defense. And here, in addition to taking the pawn back right away, there is also another way for black to play, which is to go knight to f6, which is actually probably the main line, because if black captures with a queen, as we saw previously, white can gain a tempo for development by attacking the queen, and therefore sometimes black tries to just develop the knight and then take the pawn back with the knight, which would not expose the black's queen to potential attack. In this case, you can go knight to c3, black captures the pawn, and then you go bishop c4, attacking the knight. Let's say the knight goes back, which also attacks your bishop at the moment, therefore bishop needs to go back. Here black goes knight to c6. So far, both players are just playing the most natural opening moves. Knight goes to f3. Let's say black goes pawn to e5. By the way, it's probably worth mentioning that black can't go bishop g4 here. I should mention this thing here once again, because a lot of players really love to play that move, bishop g4. Because if he goes there, do you know what white can play? You can think about this for a second. There is a common tactical pattern here. It's bishop takes f7, followed by knight goes to g5, which is a check, as well as discovered attack of the bishop, and therefore you'll take the bishop back, and along the way you're winning the pawn, you're exposing black's king, and all in all you're getting probably just a winning position after that. Therefore we can take this move back. Black can't play bishop g4 right now, and let's say black plays pawn to e5, which seems like the most natural thing to do, preparing the development. White goes d3, and let's say black goes bishop g4 here. What I love about this opening trap, which we're about to see, is that the moves of both sides are really natural, and therefore I think there is a good chance that you'll be able to trap your opponent exactly this way. Here I play pawn to h3, and if black goes bishop to h5, which is again something very natural to do, all of a sudden you have here this knight takes e5 tactical shot. What's the idea? Well, obviously it's a very shocking move because you're sacrificing your queen. And what if black takes the knight? Let's take a look at this variation first of all. This move is totally not dangerous for white at all, because you just grab the bishop and you want the e5 pawn on the way. You're keeping the strong pressure onto black's position, therefore here clearly you're getting a very advantageous position. But of course the main trouble is if black actually grabs your queen. What are you going to do next? Here you play bishop takes f7, check. The only way for black to go is to play king to e7. Then you go bishop g5. You keep chasing black's king. Once again, the following move is forced. King goes to d6. And you go knight to e4, attacking the king once again. Black captures the central knight. Once again, the move is forced. And at this point, what is interesting is that there is actually no straightforward way for you to checkmate black's king. Therefore, you still need to know how to play here, and you gotta play precise moves, or else actually black can win. For example, if you just take back the queen, which is certainly not what you want to do, because you want to keep chasing the king. In this case, black can recapture, and you actually can notice that right now black has a material advantage, right? He's up. He has like 4 minor pieces versus you having 2 minor pieces. Therefore, that's definitely not what you want. Here, white would actually lose probably. Therefore, you want to play pawn to f4, checking the king. The king has to go to d4. If he goes king to f5, that loses immediately to knight g3 checkmate. Therefore, that's not the way to go for black. Black has to go king to d4. And here, as I said previously, there is no straightforward checkmate that you can deliver, but you can really play a cool-blooded move, rook takes d1. You're just grabbing the bishop back, and you're preparing your pawn to go to c3, which will keep chasing black's king after that. And despite of black having an extra queen currently in the position, there is no defense for black, because first of all, yeah, you're still attacking the queen, but the main threat is actually pawn to c3, which will make black's king life really hard, because the king will have to go all the way forward to e3. And in case black goes something like bishop e7 or basically any other move, you can either push that pawn to c3, which is good, or even more powerful, in this position I really love that white can go with a king, so let's say to f2 or to e2, and the white's king all of a sudden starts taking part in your attack, because the king from here takes away the last square where the black's king can go, which is putting the black's king in that deadly cage. And on the next move, white is gonna play pawn to c3 checkmate. And yeah, there is nothing black can do basically about that. So you'll play c3 after any move of black, and that is it. That is a checkmate. Really cool position. I actually really love that at the end somehow the white's king took part in the attack, and at the very end, just like in classical Hollywood movies, it was the two main characters fighting against each other, the white skin versus the black skin. So yeah, pretty cool finish of the game. We've got a few more traps to cover, and this game is played between Nakamura, playing white, versus Alireza Firouzja. Maybe I mispronounced the last name, but both of them are top grandmasters, and therefore it's really interesting to see that not only some amateur players can play these traps, but they can work out even against a very experienced opponent. Alright, let's see how Nakamura handled Scandinavian Defense. After the same first moves, knight c3, queen goes to a5, Nakamura played a gambit line, pawn to b4, which is a pretty cool way for white to play. You're sacrificing the pawn, but you're gaining even more tempos for development. Currently, you're attacking the queen with the rook, therefore the queen has to retreat. And then white plays pawn to d4. You can clearly see that white is ahead in development, and that is the reason why he sacrificed the pawn. Here black played queen to d8, and even though it may seem like black is about to resign and he's already putting the pieces back to their initial squares, that's not quite the case because, in fact, black's position is solid, he has no weaknesses, he's up a pawn at the moment, and also this queen can be attacked in the future by the white's pieces from different angles, and therefore it makes sense for black to move the queen back to safety. White goes bishop c4. So far, both players are just developing pieces. Everything looks more or less natural. White goes rook e1, bringing the rook into play. And here black played pawn to c5 move. And I can see what was the black's hope here. He was probably hoping for white to capture that pawn, and after that, obviously, black would happily trade off the queens, which will significantly reduce the attacking potential of white's position. But white certainly doesn't want that. That is why Nakamura played pawn to d5, keeping up the pressure. And then after black recaptured and white captured with the knight, you can actually see that white already developed a really strong pressure onto black's position, and right now it's already not that easy for black to cope with it. He played bishop to e6, trying to trade off all these centralized white pieces, but there followed a combination. Nakamura played knight takes f7. Which is interesting because after that, black just resigned. He was probably so much shocked after about these tactics that he just resigned. And let's see why. What would happen if black capture the knight? By the way, black has to, because the knight also attacks the queen, therefore black has to capture it. And let's say if black takes with the bishop, let's start with this line. White would take knight takes e7 check, like goes king d8, and then white can trade off the queen simply and grab the bishop, which will give white material advantage and a winning position. So this happens in case black captures onto f7 with the bishop, and in case black captures with a king, I'd love to ask you, what should white do next? Because we never know what would Nakamura play in real game, but I think that I know what he would probably play. And you can think about the position and let me know what you think down in the comments below. How should white proceed here? Alright, and now let's move on to the next puzzle. Now we're approaching the final 3 opening traps in the Scandinavian Defense. Let's go through them. This game, by the way, was also played between 2 grandmasters. The white player is Lupulescu, more or less famous grandmaster. White goes pawn to d4, which is the main line. Black plays knight to f6 and then bishop to c4. That's another way for white to handle the potential problems that black can cause to white by pinning your knight in case white goes knight f3 with bishop g4. White can delay development of his knight and therefore neutralizing the black's eventual pin, before it even happens. This is what white is trying to play here. Black goes pawn to c6, preparing some escape path to his queen potentially. White goes queen to e2. Black goes bishop f5 and then bishop d2, and so far it looks like both players are just developing pieces. Normally black played knight to d7, but here there was a shocker. White played knight to b5, and it turned out that he's just winning the game, because the thing is, even though that's a discover attack to the black's queen, and the queen can easily escape, there's no problem here for black, but the issue is that knight from b5 creates a really deadly threat. If let's say black goes queen to d8, I can just go knight d6, and this is a checkmate. Really beautiful smothered checkmate. the black's queen can go elsewhere, but it doesn't really change much, because if black go queen to b6, then knight d6 follows anyway, attacking the king. Because of the pin, the knight cannot be captured. Therefore, the only thing black can do is to go king d8, but then white can destroy black's position completely by taking the pawn on f7, which is a fork to the black's king and the rook. Therefore, white will win the rook, will keep attacking black's queen, and it is resignable. In the actual game, black played for some more moves, but white won anyway because he's got a totally winning position. Really cool opening trap, which happens after very natural opening moves, and it kind of happens suddenly. I guess all opening traps happen suddenly, but nevertheless, this was really a shocker for black, I guess. And the last two traps in the Scandinavian defense are gonna be for the black side, therefore you can use them when you're playing black. And this one is really unknown, I should say, so it's interesting for you to actually get to know about this. Another way for white to handle this Scandinavian defense is to play queen to f3. That's another way for white to try to neutralize black's activity right away. If you recapture, white will recapture with a knight and get a slightly better endgame position, slightly better just because he's ahead in development. And black usually goes queen a5, well, it's not forced, of course, but it's a natural thing for black to do in Scandinavian defense in all the different variations. And then both players keep developing pieces, normally c6, bishop d2, black can here go bishop g4, developing the bishop there, queen g3, pawn to e6. And what's cool about this line is that it seems like black just overlooked the white's common tactical pattern, which we already saw in many different examples. White can go knight to b5, which is a discovered attack to the black's queen, as well as the knight is ready to jump to c7, attacking the king and the rook. Therefore, at first, it looks like black just overlooked this common tactical motif. But black actually prepared a super powerful counterblow. Can you find it? It is queen takes d2. You're ready to sacrifice your queen, because after that it follows with knight to e4, which will take the queen back on the next move. And if white goes king to e1, knight recaptures on g3, and in all the variations, well, there are not that many options actually, in all the lines black will gain a decisive material advantage. If, let's say, white just recaptures the knight, you do the same thing, and now you've got 3 minor pieces versus 2, meaning you are a piece up, which gives you a winning advantage. If white goes knight to c7, trying to capture your rook, it doesn't bother you because you will grab the white's rook as well, and the station is still the same. You're having 4 minor pieces versus 3 minor pieces of white, therefore you're still ahead in material, and it is a totally winning position for black. Really cool puzzle, also very unknown, and you have a realistic chance to surprise your opponent. And without further ado, let's move on to the last opening trap that I'm going to share with you. And the last one is really mind-blowing. I was really fascinated when I saw it for the first time, so let's go right into it. This can also be used when you're playing black. Here black can go knight f6, as we discussed previously, it's one of the main lines. And white usually goes pawn to d4, you recapture the pawn, and white goes pawn to c4, taking your knight and getting these beautiful pawns in the center. And here the most common way for black is to retreat with the knight back to b6, but you can also play a bit of a provocative move, knight to b4, which is a more aggressive way to play. And at first it looks like you just overlooked that white can go queen a4 and bring that knight in trouble, because currently white is attacking both the king and the knight. And it looks like black is just losing right now, because if you go knight to c6 trying to cover your king, then white can go pawn to a3, pushing your knight back, followed by pawn to d5. And now it looks like it's all over. The knight is attacked, it is also pinned, therefore it cannot go away, and it looks like it's time to resign. But the following moves are really fascinating. Black goes knight to c5 firstly, taking the queen. Queen goes forward to b5 to keep the pin, as well as to attack your second knight as well. And here you can play pawn to e6 as if nothing happens. You're just giving up your knight for nothing, seemingly. White happily captures it, and then you play another super calm move, pawn to b6. What's the point? What's the reason for black to sacrifice the entire knight for nothing? It's the fact that the white's queen on b5 is nearly trapped, and there is no way for it to escape. Because if white plays some move, almost any move, let's do the move like knight to f3, the main threat of black, which you're going to execute, is to first of all attack the queen, and when it goes to b4, you play knight to d3, which is check to the white's king, as well as you're attacking the queen with your bishop, and therefore on the next move it will be captured. It's a very straightforward threat, but somehow there is no way for white to stop it. If we go back to this initial position, there is no way for white to stop it. Regardless of what white do, you'll play this move pawn to a6 and then knight d3 check, winning the queen. In one game, white actually played king to e2, which is also, some really strange way of playing. If you look at this overall game, the moves of both sides are really unnatural. Like white all of a sudden, instead of developing pieces, moves the king to e2, the queen is out there on the b5, black is sacrificing the knight, something crazy is going on, and it's not stopping actually right here, because at this point, even though it's very natural for black to play queen d3, it's very tempting to start attacking the white's king this way, but the best reaction for black is actually just to trap the white's queen anyway, playing pawn to a5. Which takes away this last square from the white's queen, and therefore you're preparing bishop to a6 move on the next move, and there is no defense for white against it. Once again, when I saw this trap for the first time, I was really shocked, because it looks like almost every move here is very unusual and kind of unnatural in a way, and it looks like what kind of aliens play this game. Why is white developing his king and queen instead of developing minor pieces like it usually happens? And black is sacrificing the knight and then starts playing the pawn moves b6 and a5, which is also something weird. Usually if you sacrifice a knight, you need to rush into the attack, but here black just keeps advancing these queenside pawns as if nothing happens. It just goes to show that chess is a super beautiful game, and you can see these kind of cool combinations happening in your games too. Alright, so I hope that you enjoyed all these opening traps that I shown to you. Let me know in the comments below which one do you like the most. Also, once again, let me repeat, my sincere gratitude and thank you for your support in reaching 100,000 subscriber mark on our YouTube channel. I'll definitely keep up my best to keep serving you in the future. In order to celebrate this occasion, we have currently these special offers for the next few days only. Therefore, if you're interested, you can click the link down below into the description and check this out. I do believe that the new middle game expert package, which we created to help you move forward in your chess advancement, will be really helpful to you, so you can go there and check this out. Once again, thank you for everything, and I wish you having a great rest of the day.